Welcome, everyone, to a special segment of the justBernard Show here on our live stream channel. Today, we are going to be speaking with Hillary Raimo, who just returned back from the Standing Rock No DAPL blockade, for lack of a better term. And this is a very important issue for many of us, and we're going to go deeper into that. For those of you that don't know what's going on, because the media isn't speaking about it, there is, the Dakota Access Pipeline is going through native lands as well as sacred lands, and there's a big concern that it's going to poison the water. As we can see, what was happening, what was a couple days ago, a pipeline burst and created a state of emergency, I believe, in 2 states. So this is a very important issue, especially for those of us in this awakening consciousness eco movement. And I thought it'd be wonderful to speak with Hillary, being that she was there on the ground and she has some information that she can share with us. So let me tell you a little bit about Hillary Raimo. She is, for those of you that don't know who she is a longtime radio talk show host who has been on the airwaves since 2005. She is the founder and executive producer of Yin Radio TV. She is a Reiki master teacher in Usui and Karuna Reiki. With a background in psychology, real estate, and insurance, Hillary also spends time painting and photographing nature. She is the founder of the Love, Breathe for Earth project, dedicated to bringing nature and meditation together to enhance the human earthly experience. And you can find out more about Hillary after the show at hillaryraimo.com. That's RAIMO. So without further ado, let me welcome Hillary to today's special show. How are you, Hillary? Welcome. Thank you
Hi,
for coming today.
hi, Bernard. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, we're very happy to hear from you and any information that we can get about the Dakota Access Pipeline and the blockade, because as you know, there's not really much information being shared with the general public. So let me ask, let's start by talking a little bit about what drew you to want to go out there. Why is this issue so important for you that you literally drove all the way out there and spent a few days there?
Yeah, well, I have to say, I had been watching the story for some time. I had followed the Facebook posts of Dallas Goldtooth for a little bit. He was on the ground there. He was giving some updates, some live feed, and I was watching some of it through that when Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! Went out to the site, and
Yeah.
she actually helped to expose the misuse of trained dogs to turn on the protesters, bite them, so on and so forth. The Dakota Access Pipeline Company had hired private security that brought these dogs in, brought pepper spray in, and really
Yeah.
was using these tactics that were really quite unethical. So when Amy Goodman went in to cover that, she got on the ground, got some really great footage. She did a great job of giving another side of it, because I was also watching mainstream media to see what the story was that they were telling, which is what I do. And they weren't really giving an accurate description. And I was a little suspect of what they were doing, because a lot of the footage that they were sharing was edited so that it was really portraying like the angry Indian meme.
Right.
And when they brought those dogs and pepper spray, and it got a lot of attention because it's a violent aspect, a violent element of the stories. Of course, it got a little more attention when it seemed to turn violent. But when Amy hit the ground and gave us some different side of the story, a different angle, it became pretty clear that we weren't getting the full story. I wanted to go see it for myself, so I called my friend Phil Chavez, who's a Jicarilla Apache elder who lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and asked him if he wanted to go on a road trip up to North Dakota. And of course, he agreed. So I got on a plane 2 days later, flew down to Albuquerque, and Phil and I drove from Albuquerque up to North Dakota to kind of see for ourselves and get a feel for it. So it was a multidimensional purpose. We wanted to see what the media was portraying accurately or not accurately, but Phil also wanted to go up to represent the Jicarilla Apache and to, be present. And I wanted to see and feel it as well. So it was a personal element as well as a professional.
Wonderful. And what an interesting experience it must have been. What was it like upon arriving to the campsite? Was it what you expected? What they've been showing on the media? What was the feeling like? How big was it? we're seeing so many pictures. Like people are posting pictures of Woodstock.
Oh, yeah, I know. Fact check your sources, folks. Reverse image search is a great thing.
Yes.
Well, when we arrived. There's camps set up on both sides of the river, and one of the sides is private land, and on the on reservation land, privately owned, and then on the other side is not reservation land, from what I understood, from what I was told. When we first arrived, we were at the Spirit Stone camp, which is on LaDonna's property, so we had gotten off the road and driven down a few long driveways. And we arrived and it was pretty quiet. I mean, there were people set up in tents. It was really not as crowded on that one side as it was on the overflow camp on the other side. So when we got in, we parked and we walked around, and some people kind of looked at us and were very friendly, and other people had some, kind of indifference, and we just kind of walked around. We walked into the kitchen, and the first thing I was told was no camera, no camera.
Oh.
And I said, why? Did you guys, why? I didn't really understand what that was, but that was the first thing that came at me. And Phil talked to the woman in charge there and explained to her why we were there. And she calmed down a little bit, but there was a little apprehension from people at first. I didn't have my media pass on at that moment, so they didn't really know who we were. We could have just been supporters walking in to get some soup.
Right,
but
right.
my camera that was hanging around my neck, I guess, was a problem. And I guess I was just explaining the protocol of asking permission to take photographs, asking, kindly to not photograph ceremonial elements of the Native American, what the rituals and things of
Right.
sorts, or, the prayer pipes and the prayer ties and that sort of thing. I totally understood that, and I
Right.
had expected that. When we went to the other side of the river over into the overflow camp, you go through a gateway of sorts that is kind of like a security checkpoint. They really want to make sure that nobody's bringing firearms into the camp, and nobody has any of that stuff. So there's a little bit of safety concern with that too, because one person gets through with a gun, and then the authorities can say they're armed and go in with different intentions, versus if they're unarmed, which there was a big sign, a big banner next to that gate, we are unarmed. So it was very clear to everybody passing by or coming in and out of the camp that this was a peaceful, protective protest. And some people have criticized me for using the word protest or protesters, but that's really what they're doing. I mean, they're really standing up to protest the eminent domain that's happening, and where the government just comes in and takes the land from ranch owners. So they have a right to be there. They have a right to be upset. They have a right to be protesting and protecting the water. So my personal journey started basically from seeing I was outraged that Amy Goodman had an arrest warrant issued
Yeah.
for her part of covering the other side. It's like, how can you live in this country and say you can't show both sides of the story? So it really highlighted the manipulation of mainstream media, and I felt compelled as owner of Yin Radio TV to get out there and to say, let's go get some raw footage, let's get our feet on the ground, let's take a look and see what's really happening. I know you had mentioned some of the images circulating that are old
Yeah.
Woodstock photographs. Definitely was not that many people there. And it's the wrong image anyway. I don't know why people do that,
I
but
know.
okay. So, but there was probably a good few thousand people, different heritage, different skin colors, white people, Native American people. It was a good mix. And this was the first time since the 1800s that I understand, and I was told by several people, that this many tribal nations have actually come together.
Yeah.
And I think that alone is a significant story, on top of the media misrepresentation, on top of the pipeline issues. We have a phenomenal event happening that is really historic in just that sense alone.
Yes, yes, I couldn't agree more. And of course they're not sharing anything about that. I myself have been reading a little bit how I believe I guess feuding tribes that have been feuding with each other are uniting for this cause. They're doing ceremony together for this cause. What when you said ceremony, what types of ceremonies were being done? Was it within one tribe doing their ritual, or were several tribes coming together and doing ritual together, or a little bit of both? What did you get to see?
Well, I didn't see anything personally. They don't. My skin color, my hair color, my eye color, kind of
Right.
gives. Um,
Did not give
and
you a
I'll talk
pass.
about that. I'll talk about that in a second. But I had spoken to Lee Plenty Wolf,
Uh-huh.
and he had actually sought me and Phil out. He saw us walking through the camp, and he came up and he spoke to us, and he was very friendly, very open. And he's the one that spoke to us about the ceremonial aspect. They had set up a tent in the middle of the camp, where he said that the seven fires had been lit, and that the head councils, the head tribal leaders from each nation had been invited to come in and to speak in their own language around these fires. And this was the first time that this had been done in a very long time. And there was, I heard we weren't there too late in the evening, but we had heard from other people that they do drumming into the evening, and you can hear flutes playing sometimes. So it was, yeah, they came together from what I was
Wow.
told, and they did that ceremony, and that alone is a reason to celebrate. It's like the great
Yeah.
coming together. It's a prophecy. He
Yes.
said very clearly that this was a fulfillment of prophecy.
Isn't that amazing? And how lucky we are to be living in a time that we're seeing them all come together. I think it's just so beautiful. And with that being said, what are your thoughts as a white woman in the media coming to this? How was that a part of the experience that you had?
Yeah. Well, I've gone down to the southwestern United States for the last 10 years, and I've worked with different elders and different people within different tribes, some in the Yemes Pueblo in New Mexico. So I've been exposed to it before. It's kind of like reverse discrimination at times.
Yeah, yeah,
And it just kind of comes with the territory. You have to accept the fact that they have very legitimate reasons for being upset with the whole white man coming in and stealing their land and taking over their lands. And what has happened to them is a very real wound in this country. And we founded this country on that wound. So we brought slaves from Africa and other countries in here. And yeah, we have that wound to deal with too. And we're watching that play out with Black Lives Matter movements
yeah.
happening now. But we also have to realize that that is not quite as old as the Native American white person wound. And until we really start honoring the treaties that we, as white people, came in and made arrangements with Native Americans, then we're going to keep having this, this lack of resolve. So how do we deal with it when we're not in that generation that made it happen? Tolerance, and by going in with respect and being humble. And so when I walked into the camp, I was with Phil Chavez, who is a Native American, full-blooded Native American. So they were a little more willing to speak to me, but then they saw my media badge, and then they were a little more hesitant. And because what's going on is the media is coming into this camp, getting footage, getting quotes, getting interviews, and then they go back to their stations, or they go back to their studios, and they edit out
Yeah.
the significant parts. And so there's an element of mistrust, rightfully so.
Yeah, rightfully
So
so.
rightfully so. So when I walked up to anybody, I told them who I was. I explained to them why I had come, and I shared a little bit about my story, being, hey, I'm here to give the other side of it, because I've seen it for myself being completely manipulated in the headlines. So once they heard that and they realized I was filming with a cell phone and not, the big TV camera,
Right.
they were a little more at ease. And so once you opened up the conversation with people, they tended to open up to you and to share their heart and share their stories. And it was really phenomenal to witness and be a part of.
That's great. And I'm guessing you're going to be sharing some more of that in the coming days within your own station and your own website. So
Yes,
very good.
I'll be having an episode put out, which contains some footage that I've shared, but and mostly more that I have not shared yet. So you can look for that on my YouTube channel. I'll be having that come out shortly.
Good, good. And let me ask you, Hillary, to explain a little bit, because the media tends to focus on one thing, like you said, one thing or another, and I don't feel that even I myself have the whole picture of what's going on there. You mentioned eminent domain. You mentioned them taking sacred land. What exactly is going on? Can we explain the
Well,
dynamic of what's going on?
yeah, yeah. Eminent domain is covered under the Fifth Amendment in the Constitution, and you have to prove four elements of that. One, it has to be private property. It must be taken for public use and with just compensation. So we have the government going into these ranchers' lands and basically knocking on their door with a piece of paper saying, well, we're here under this law, under the Constitution, to take your land because it's considered necessary for public use. So the oil companies have come in under this jurisdiction, and either the ranchers, the landowners will sign it away, not realizing they're entitled to compensation even. So sometimes the government gets these land pieces but for free, for
Wow.
nothing, because they either don't tell people they're entitled to just compensation, hoping that people will just sign it away and save them money. But then what it does too is it also just gives us no recourse as private citizens. We just don't have a say, and it just seems completely unfair. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really get into, a lot of the legal jargon over this, but they did have a woman there. Her name was Angela Bybens, and she was offering free legal support. And they do have a hotline. I'd like to give that out.
Yes,
You can
please.
call 701 891 9009. And you can, if you have a radio show, you can ask to speak to her and she can speak to the legal stuff. I'm hoping to have her come on Yin Radio TV to talk a little bit about it. But also, if you are a participant in need of legal service, you can call that number and get assistance with some of the things if you're dealing with anything. When I was there were 22 people who had tied themselves to the equipment and were arrested for trespassing. And from what I understand, they're using some kind of zero tolerance type tactics to really push legal action against these people who had tied themselves to the equipment. I did not see that for myself. We were in the camp, the overflow camp, doing some interviews, and I was interacting with people, and I really wanted to cover the humanitarian aspect of this. What brought you here? Why are you here? Why do
Right.
you feel so strongly? So that's really where my focus was, but that had happened, and it really wasn't like a huge mob kind of scene. There was two areas up the street from where the overflow camp entrance was, where they had signs attached to some of the fencing that was adjacent to the private land where the bulldozers were. You could see where the land had been turned up. Somebody had said to me that they had dug up an area where there's a special kind of prairie dog, and you could just see the prairie dogs running over the hills, kind of like reminded me of a scene in the Lorax where you have the
Right.
animals kind of running out. So it was pretty dramatic in some senses. So you had that element, but then you also had the camaraderie and people really coming together, like I said before. So it was quite a dynamic of different energies there.
And I'm sure many people went there for many different reasons. Were you able to speak with any of the indigenous people there on why they felt it was so important for Native Americans to gather and to stop this project? What was the main discussion that you overheard or got to talk to with them about? I understand water is one main issue, of course.
Well, it really was the main issue. Every single person I spoke to, on or off of camera, had the same kind of call to show up for the earth. They had the call to come together despite differences or despite age-long rivalries with other tribes. They felt that it was so important for them to come together to stand up and speak up for and be protectors for the water. So what the Obama administration ended up doing was filing an injunction that allows for the pipeline to they basically have to build around the tribal area where the protests are, from what I understand. And this doesn't stop the pipeline. It just means they have to go around the areas. And that was the case. They were a little frustrated because they knew that in the grand big picture of things, they weren't going to stop the pipeline, but they were able to protect and apply a little more protection to the burial grounds, the ancestral grounds, and their lands. But again, if you're not stopping the pipeline, you're not really stopping the cause, because they'll just build it 40 miles down the river,
Right.
and go under the river there. And if they have any problems with the oil leak itself, what it's going to do is it's still going to do the contamination. And while this is all going on, we have a few breaks going on across the country. Alabama, North Carolina had one, Yellowstone River had one. So we have these things happening, and it's almost like, is something happening to these pipelines? Because if you have billions of dollars to build the pipeline, what's the problem with maintaining it or using materials that don't break?
Yeah.
I mean, that's my first
Right.
common sense question, right? And so is it a lack of integrity and ethics on a corporate part? Is it being cheap? Or is there something else going on? Are we having shifts in the earth? Are we having earthquakes? We have all kinds of stuff going on from fracking. Lots of proof saying that a lot of these mini micro type earthquakes are happening because of the fracking. So if we have structure set up on the land that will break, can you imagine if we had an earthquake and there was a shift in the land and you broke a piece of this pipe and you have some of the dirtiest oil coming through it, and it's just going to spill out everywhere?
Yeah.
What are they going to do to make everyone, all life, not just humans, but I mean, we have animals that would be affected. We have ecology that would be affected. We have plant life. You know, this is really an environmental crisis beyond anything that people really realize, because this is not just about drinking water either. This is about the contamination of land, and the water gets into the water cycle. And eventually you have water with chemicals in it circulating in the water cycle, which affects everything and everyone eventually, because the water cycle is global. It's part of Mother Earth's cycle. And when you have all these different contaminants getting into the water cycle, it's getting into your soil, it's getting into your plants, it's making people sick. And I really, because I have a background in insurance, I have a really strong feeling that this is all about liability, corporate liability, and the fact that they don't want to be held responsible financially for cleaning up a contaminated ecosystem that includes everything. It would absolutely wipe them out and put them out of business.
Well, we saw what happened with the BP oil spill and the liability or lack of liability over that situation. So I can only imagine that they've had the experience now, and they can set up laws to protect themselves so they don't have to pay in the case of a leak or something like that, or at least minimizes their liability, unfortunately. With that being said, though, so many people who are very concerned about this issue were very celebratory, thinking that we've won, thinking that when Obama said they were going to pause it, it's like, oh, well, look what Obama did, he fixed it. And it's not, that's not the case, is it?
No, unfortunately. I mean, Obama is part of the project. So if he shuts the project down, he's closing down his own project.
Right.
I mean, you can't impose eminent domain, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can impose eminent domain without federal approval. So if Obama has approved the use of eminent domain to take the land from the ranchers and these people, then for him to shut it down, it would be like him shooting himself in the foot. He's already approved the project. He's helped it go forward legally. So I think it's really a matter of appeasement at this point.
That's
it's like,
what I think.
Okay, there's a lot of people protesting. Some of these people had been in this camp since April, since they first started. They're planning on being there all winter, and North Dakota winters are no joke. So you have an extraordinary resilience in the heart and soul of these people who are standing the ground here. And, you know, one of the women I interviewed mentioned how powerful their prayers are. Native American prayers are so powerful, she said, that there's a lot of fear in their spirituality. And we can also take a look at current day terrorism and analyze the fear of a strong backbone type religion spirituality. Granted, it's fanatical on some ends, but anything can be fanatical. You can have fanatical spirituality, you can have fanatical belief systems. But what this woman really said, which I really appreciated hearing, was that the government's afraid of their prayers, and they know they're strong people. And when they show up and come together like this, there's nothing that breaks that up. Maybe sometimes inner politics and things of that sort. But even then, when they still go back to their spirituality, there's a strength in that. And there's something in the Western American culture that is missing that. You might have Catholics or Muslims or this or that, going around in our country, but the general feel to American culture is that it's a young, soulless kind of culture, because it's so wrapped up in capitalism and consumerism that this is why corporate entities like these are able to manipulate and do whatever they want, because there's really no accountability to a higher power or a higher understanding except greed.
I couldn't agree with you more. and to throw oil or to throw a fuel on the fire, it seems that many of, for lack of a better term, unspiritual people seem to do their best to protect the corporate America and defend corporate America. And how dare these people rise up? They're becoming a nuisance, etc., etc. And with that, what was the general consensus as to how do they know they've won? When will they know they've won? When will the people leave the blockade? Is there any talk of that?
There was talk of coming and going home, coming back, but the general consensus was they're there until they don't have to be there anymore. They don't have that, vision yet. Right. I think what they really want is it to stop altogether, and it should stop altogether. There was a lot of mixed feelings, mixed emotions about that, but most of the elders that I spoke to said that they really just didn't feel like it was going to stop it, even though they had succeeded or won in protecting the lands where they are now. Again, it goes back to the bigger picture, which they can see and understand, which is also why they're all there, because the bigger picture really is we can't drink oil. And if we contaminate all of our water supplies, you have all of these different things showing up in our water supplies across the board. You have chemicals showing up that have never been in the water system before. And oil is just one of those concerns. There's lots of other things that we're doing to contaminate our environment, and in the manufacturing process, the fashion industry, even dry cleaning your clothes contributes. All of those chemicals that you use end up in our water supply. And even though they claim to clean it out and to do reverse osmosis, most of the bottled water that you buy now is really not good water, and it's just regurgitated, cleaned up water from the tap, if they bother to do that.
Yeah, that's so true. We're running out of time, and to wrap things up, Hillary, I was wondering if, for those of us who are watching this and are concerned about the Dakota Access Pipeline, and perhaps either want to go out there or want to do something, what would you recommend to somebody, A, if they want to go out there, and B, to do something from home? What can we do?
Well, if you want to go out there, go. I mean, I did, and I was really glad that I did that. I made that decision to see it for myself and be there and experience it. And there's nothing like firsthand direct experience. So you can go to a lot of good websites out there. They tell you exactly where it is. You can Google Standing Stone Camp, Standing Rock Camp, and you'll find it. From home, talk about it. Make it a conversation. Talk to your partners, your friends, your children about why this matters. And if they're not going to talk about it on TV or online, and they're going to focus on other stories, more dramatic, more violent, well, that's great, but it still won't matter if we've contaminated our bodies and our earth to the point of no return. So if we self-destruct in this way, the mainstream headlines really don't matter. The elections won't matter. It won't matter if Hillary or Trump win. So getting the conversation started, I think, is really important. And if you can't go, start up something local. I mean, there's righteous anger, and righteous anger is sometimes really appropriate when it comes to resources that are an earthly, all species right, and water really is, and so is the soil, and so is the air we breathe. So if we don't have somebody or groups of people or people who use their platforms for this kind of information then we're kind of enabling these
Yes,
companies to get away with it. So that's where we have to be accountable.
I agree. Well, I thank you so much for taking your time out today and sharing with us your experience at the camp. For everyone who's watching, please, you can follow up at hillaryraimo.com. That's RAIMO. And what's your YouTube channel's name so they can watch the videos of the footage you've taken?
Yeah, you can go to YouTube, you can search Hillary Raimo, and my channel will come up. And, I'm also going to do yinradiotv.com. We're opening it up to other people who have footage or photos or firsthand experiences. If you have something you'd like to share, I'm going to use Yin Radio TV as an outlet to get real footage out there and people's experience. You can send that along through the website as well.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to our special live stream today with Hillary Raimo. We'll try to keep giving and sharing more information on the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Standing Rock blockade and protests as the weeks come. I believe we have a few more people coming to talk with us. So do what you can. If you want to, go out there. Make sure you start the conversation. Sign petitions. I actually saw a local here in Roanoke, a march or something in solidarity with Standing Rock. So organize a solidarity march or something. You can do it. And we can take back our Earth if we stand together and protect each other and protect our planet. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a wonderful day. We love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.